Have you ever booked a place online only to wonder what's hiding behind those glossy photos? That's what Ava thought about on her way to a small Airbnb cabin in the mountains. She needed this trip, a break from the chaos of city life, a chance to breathe and be alone. The listing had looked perfect. Rustic wood, soft lighting, surrounded by trees with a little creek nearby. No neighbors, just peace. Or at least, that's what she thought. When she pulled into the gravel driveway, the cabin looked exactly like the pictures. A neat little porch, a rocking chair, even a welcome mat that read, "Stay a while." The key was waiting in a lockbox, just like the host said it would be. The host, Daniel, had a friendly tone in his messages, using smiley faces and phrases like, "Anything you need, just text me." Ava appreciated that. But as soon as she stepped inside, something felt off. She couldn't name it. The place was clean, warm, and smelled faintly of cedar. But the silence was so heavy it pressed against her ears. She unpacked slowly, trying to shake the feeling. The living room had cozy plaid blankets, a fireplace, and a bookshelf filled with random paperbacks. She noticed little details that made the place feel curated, almost staged, like someone wanted her to feel comfortable, but had tried a bit too hard. The bathroom was small but modern. White tiles, a glass shower, and a large rectangular mirror above the sink. That's where she noticed the first odd thing. The edges of the mirror were slightly foggy, like condensation had seeped inside the glass, even though the air was cool and dry. She tapped it lightly, out of habit, and froze. Instead of the dull, solid thud of glass against a wall, the sound was hollow, almost like knocking on a wooden box. She laughed nervously at herself. Old cabin, old walls, she thought, trying to dismiss the thought curling in the back of her mind. That night, after a quiet dinner and a glass of wine, she began her skincare routine. The bathroom light was harsh compared to the warm glow of the living room. She leaned in close to the mirror, applying moisturizer, when something caught her eye. A tiny, almost imperceptible glint of red in the corner. She squinted, leaning closer. It blinked once, then again. Her stomach dropped. It was a light, a small red dot glowing faintly from behind the glass. For a long moment, Ava just stared at it, her breath shallow. Her brain scrambled for rational explanations. Maybe it was part of the lighting fixture, maybe a reflection. But deep down, she knew better. She'd read too many articles, heard too many horror stories. Hidden cameras. She forced herself to move, her hands trembling as she pulled her phone from her pocket. Her reflection looked alien. Wide eyes, pale skin, her face fractured by panic. She dialed the host's number. The call rang once before a calm male voice answered. "Ava, anything okay?" His tone was too smooth, too prepared, as if he had been expecting this call. There's something in the bathroom mirror, a light. Is there a camera here?" There was a brief silence on the line. Then Daniel chuckled lightly like she had told a bad joke. "Oh, that? No. It's part of the smart home system. Motion sensors, heat sensors, for your safety." "My safety?" her voice cracked. "Why is it behind the mirror?" "That's just where it's installed," he said, still calm, almost bored. "It's standard in some of our properties. Nothing to worry about." Nothing to worry about. The phrase made her skin crawl. "I want it off," she demanded, "or I'm leaving." Daniel sighed, a sound that didn't fit the cheerful tone of his messages earlier. "I'll disable it remotely. Stay put, okay? "Don't go outside. It's dark, and there are animals out there." The line went dead. Ava stared at her phone, her heart pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. Stay put, not a chance. She grabbed her bag from the bed and stuffed her things inside with shaking hands. Then, without even putting on a coat, she bolted for the front door. The air outside was icy, biting her skin as she dashed to her car. The gravel crunched under her boots, loud in the oppressive silence. She unlocked the door and slid into the driver's seat, slamming the locks down. Her hands were fumbling for the keys when something felt wrong. She opened the door again, crouched, and her heart sunk. Both front tires were shredded. Rubber curled like black petals on the ground. She checked the back. Slashed too. Someone had done this on purpose. Her phone buzzed in her hand. A text from Daniel. "Ava, you're making this harder than it needs to be." Her breath hitched. She typed back frantically. "I'm calling the police." She hit dial before he could respond, her fingers slick with sweat. The dispatcher's calm voice was the only lifeline she had left. "Stay on the line," they said. "Officers are on the way." Minutes stretched into hours. At least that's what it felt like. Ava crouched low in the driver's seat, eyes fixed on the cabin. Every creak of the trees sounded like footsteps. Every rustle of leaves made her flinch. And then, without warning, the cabin went dark. All the lights gone. Even the faint glow from the bathroom window vanished. That's when she saw movement. A shadow passed across the porch, tall and deliberate. Ava ducked, clamping her hand over her mouth to stifle a sob. Another buzz from her phone. She didn't want to look, but she had to. The message read, "You won't find you in time." Headlights finally pierced the darkness 20 agonizing minutes later. Red and blue lights flashed against the trees as a patrol car rolled up the drive. Ava burst from the car, screaming, waving her arms like a madwoman. Two officers ran towards her, voices calm but urgent, ushering her behind them as they approached the cabin. It was empty. Not just empty, stripped. No blankets, no books, no dishes. The bathroom mirror was gone, leaving behind a gaping rectangle in the wall like a missing tooth. The officers exchanged uneasy glances. One checked his radio, muttering about running the Airbnb listing. That's when they both froze. "There's no record," the taller officer said. "Nothing under that address. No host named Daniel. It's not on the platform." Ava stared at him, numb. "What do you mean? I booked it. I paid." "Ma'am," the officer interrupted gently, "there's no payment history either. It's like this place doesn't exist." Her phone buzzed again. She almost dropped it. A new message from an unknown number. "See you soon, Ava." The officers demanded to see her phone, but before she could unlock it, the screen went black. Dead. She swore it had been at 70% just minutes ago. They escorted her to the car, promising to take her somewhere safe. But as they drove down that winding road, Ava caught a glimpse in the rearview mirror. For the briefest second, she saw a reflection that wasn't hers. A pale face, smiling wide from the back seat. She screamed, twisting around, but the back was empty. The officers asked what happened, but the words died in her throat. How could she explain something like that without sounding insane? Later at the station, they tried to calm her down, saying stress can play tricks on the mind. But when she asked for a bathroom and stepped inside, her heart stopped cold. Above the sink, hanging on the wall, was a rectangular mirror. Its edges were slightly foggy, and in the corner, barely visible unless you looked closely, blinked a tiny red dot. And if you hear your name tonight, don't answer.
It started with something simple, just another attempt to shake off the weight of long hours behind a desk. The new fitness club was spotless, filled with polished mirrors and expensive machines that gleamed under bright fluorescent lights. Everything about the place whispered luxury, and that was exactly why I signed up. I thought it might be the push I needed, something to break the monotony of work and home. The front desk staff greeted me with cheerful smiles, the kind that feel practiced, but warm enough to seem genuine. I didn't think twice about it, at least not then. On my second visit, while I was shoving my shoes into a locker, a man next to me casually mentioned something that stuck in my mind like a splinter. "Watch your stuff," he said, without looking at me. His voice was low, almost like a warning he wasn't supposed to give. When I asked what he meant, he only shrugged. "People say there have been thefts, wallets, phones. Just keep an eye out." He closed his locker and walked away before I could ask more. I laughed it off at first, telling myself every gym probably had stories like that. People gossip, people exaggerate. But the way he said it, like it was more than missing wallets, made me uneasy. The next few days I was careful. I used the lock they provided, checked it twice. Nothing strange happened, and soon the warning faded from my thoughts. Until that Wednesday evening. It was later than usual, almost closing time. The locker room was quiet, empty, except for the low hum of air vents and the occasional drip of water from the showers. I changed quickly, peeling off my sweaty shirt, when something caught my eye. A faint, pulsing glow above me. At first, I thought it was just the light reflecting off the polished metal, but when I squinted, I saw it clearly. A tiny red dot, glowing inside the vent, directly over the row of lockers. I froze, hands in my hands, heart pounding so hard I felt it in my throat. A smoke detector? No, it didn't look like one. The red dot wasn't steady. It blinked, like a recording light. The angle of the vent, the way it faced down toward us, toward me. I climbed up on the bench and leaned closer. The slit in the vent revealed a small, glossy black lens, and the second I recognized what it was, I felt sick. Someone had installed a camera, right there, above the lockers, aimed to see everything. I climbed down, hands shaking, and went straight to the front desk. The manager on duty was a man in his 40s, sharp suit, perfectly styled hair, and a smile that seemed carved onto his face. When I told him what I saw, he barely blinked. He said, "Oh, that," he said with a chuckle that didn't reach his eyes. "It's just a smoke detector. The older models have little indicator lights, completely normal." I told him it wasn't normal. I told him I saw a lens. He kept insisting it was standard equipment, brushing me off with corporate politeness. When I demanded they remove it, he sighed. "Sir, we have strict safety regulations. That's not a camera." His voice had an edge now, like I was becoming a problem. I left, furious. But more than that, I felt something else. A creeping sense that I'd stepped into something bigger than I understood. That night, as I sat in my car replaying everything, my phone buzzed with a new message from an unknown number. I opened it, and my stomach dropped. "Enjoy your workout. You look great today." No emojis, no name, just those words. My fingers trembled as I scrolled up, hoping it was some weird marketing text or a mistake. But there was nothing else. Just that single perfect line to make me feel exposed. Watched. I didn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that blinking red light, the lens peering through the vent. I thought about canceling my membership, but something in me needed answers. The next day I returned, not to work out, but to check the vent. I went straight to the locker room, ignoring the usual greetings, and looked up. It was gone. The vent was still there, but the light, the lens, vanished, like it had never been there. My heart sank. If anyone else came in, they'd think I was crazy. Maybe that was the point. I cornered the manager again, demanded an explanation. He smiled, that same empty smile. "Sir, As I said, there's nothing unusual in our locker rooms. Perhaps you were mistaken." His tone was patronizing now, the kind you use with someone unstable. "Would you like me to show you our safety inspection reports?" I didn't answer, because in that moment, I realized he believed something I didn't, that I wouldn't go any further, that I'd just leave. But I didn't. I called the police. They came later that day, asked questions, inspected the locker room. I followed them inside, pulse pounding, waiting for that moment when they'd see the truth. But when the officer climbed up and unscrewed the vent cover, there was nothing inside, just empty metal and dust. He looked at me like I'd wasted his time. On my way out, humiliated and boiling with rage, I noticed something strange in the lobby. A security monitor, mounted behind the desk, showing multiple camera feeds. Hallways, the weight room, the entrance. I stared, scanning for any sign of the locker room, but the feed switched too fast. The manager noticed me looking and quickly turned the monitor away. 2 nights later, I got another message. "We like how determined you are. Come back tomorrow. Alone." No number I could trace, no profile. Just those words. It should have terrified me, and it did. But it also pulled me in, because now I knew it wasn't in my head. Someone was watching me. Someone who could make a camera vanish and leave no trace. I didn't go the next day, or the day after. I stayed home, blinds drawn, checking every corner of my apartment like a paranoid maniac. But the texts didn't stop. "You missed leg day. Don't make us wait." The last one froze me. "Your door isn't locked." I lunged for the handle, heart exploding in my chest. It was locked, but for the first time, I wondered how long it had been since I checked. I called the police again, but when they arrived, there was nothing. No footprints, no signs of forced entry. Just me, looking like a lunatic. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I drove to the gym, long after closing. The parking lot was empty, the building dark, but the front door was unlocked. My breath fogged in the cold air as I stepped inside, every instinct screaming to turn back. I told myself I'd just look, just confirm something, anything, and leave. The locker room was silent. My footsteps echoed on the tile. I went straight to the vent and froze. It was back. The red light pulsed faintly, almost like it was breathing. I climbed up on the bench, hands trembling, and peered through the slit. The lens stared back at me, black and glossy. And then, God, I swear this is true, it moved, just a fraction, like an eye adjusting focus. I stumbled back, heart hammering, and that's when the lights cut out. The dark swallowed me whole. For a second, I thought I heard breathing, not mine, something slow and steady, close enough to feel against my skin. Then a whisper, "Perfect form tonight." I ran. I don't remember leaving the building. I don't remember getting to my car. I just remember driving, hands slick with sweat, headlights carving through the empty streets like I was the only person alive. The police searched the gym again the next day. No cameras, no signs of forced entry. They showed me security footage from the night I was there. It showed me walking in, moving through the locker room. Then, nothing, just static. And after a few seconds, the feed cleared to show an empty hallway. No one leaving, no one entering, just emptiness. Except, no, not quite empty. In the corner of the last frame, barely visible, was a figure standing in the dark, face covered, head tilted, like they were watching the screen, watching me. And behind them, against the wall, was something that looked like a vent cover, clutched tight in their hands. The official report says the footage is corrupted. They can't identify the person, can't explain how they got in without triggering the alarms. But I know this, the camera wasn't the only one watching. And if you ever step into that locker room, look up, because maybe, just maybe, it's looking back at you.
Have you ever wondered how safe your hotel room really is? That question haunted Daniel and Claire in what was supposed to be the most romantic night of their lives. Their 5th anniversary had been planned down to the smallest detail. Reservations at a luxury hotel in the heart of the city, a suite with a view, champagne chilling on the counter. Everything felt perfect at first. Almost too perfect. The hotel suite was exactly as advertised, sleek, modern, filled with warm ambient light and soft music playing faintly through hidden speakers. Claire tossed her purse on the bed and twirled in front of the full-length mirror, her laughter echoing lightly in the room. Daniel smiled, feeling proud of himself for pulling off such a surprise. They had been through a rough year, and this getaway was meant to be a reset button. At least, that's what he told himself. As Claire headed to the bathroom to freshen up, Daniel wandered around the room, admiring the decor. His eyes landed on the bedside table. An alarm clock sat there, black and glossy, with a strange, perfectly round dark spot near the corner. It looked like a design choice at first, but something about it bothered him. The spot was too precise, too smooth, like a little glass eye staring back at him. He leaned closer, squinting. That's when a memory surfaced. An article he had read months ago about hidden cameras in Airbnb rentals and hotels. It mentioned common hiding places, smoke detectors, vents, alarm clocks. And that exact spot on the clock, it fit the description. A chill crawled down his spine. Grabbing his phone, he opened the flashlight app and angled the beam toward the black circle. For a second, nothing. Then, a faint, unmistakable glint, like light bouncing off a tiny lens. His stomach dropped. "Claire, can you come here for a second?" He tried to keep his voice calm. She appeared in the doorway, mid-sentence, but froze when she saw his expression. "What's wrong?" I think there's a camera in this clock." Her face went pale. She walked over slowly, peered down, and let out a shaky laugh that didn't sound convincing. "Are you sure? Maybe it's just a reflection." Daniel shook his head. "No, look." He handed her the phone and showed her how the light caught the hidden lens. Claire's hands trembled as she set the clock down like it might burn her. "Call the front desk," she whispered. Daniel did. The line clicked, and a cheerful voice answered. He explained the situation, his words sharp, his pulse hammering. There was a pause, too long, and then the staff member apologized profusely. "Sir, that's extremely concerning. Please stay where you are. We'll send someone up immediately to check." Minutes later, 2 staff members arrived, a man in a tailored suit and a young woman clutching a clipboard. They inspected the clock, their brows furrowed. The man looked shocked, his voice heavy with apologies. "This is unacceptable. We'll have to check all the rooms. We can move you to another suite right away." Claire glanced to Daniel, her eyes pleading, but something in his gut screamed no. If someone had placed a camera here, what were the chances the next room was safe? "We'll stay here," he said firmly. "Just make sure no one else comes in." The manager hesitated, but finally nodded. "Of course, if you need anything, call us." Then they left, leaving the couple in silence that suddenly felt suffocating. Claire sank onto the bed, wrapping her arms around herself. "Daniel, what if someone's been watching us?" He didn't answer. He couldn't. Instead, he started scanning the room, checking every vent, every outlet, every picture frame. Hours passed like that, their romantic night dissolving into paranoia. Finally, exhausted, they tried to sleep with the lights on. The air felt heavier somehow, the shadows longer. It was after midnight when the phone rang. Daniel snatched it up. "Hello?" The same cheerful voice from earlier, but this time it carried an edge of urgency. "Mr. Harris, we need you and your wife to vacate the room immediately. There's a maintenance issue." "What kind of issue?" "I'm afraid I can't explain over the phone, but it's important for your safety." Daniel stared at the receiver, his heart pounding. "No, we're not leaving. We'll check out in the morning." The voice hesitated, then softened. "Sir, I strongly advise—" He hung up. Claire's voice trembled. "Daniel, why would they say that? What's going on?" He shook his head. "I don't know, but we're not opening that door for anyone." He slid the deadbolt, latched the chain, then dragged the heavy armchair in front of the door. They barricaded themselves like prey hiding from a predator. Time stretched painfully slow. Every creak of the building, every muffled laugh from the hallway made their nerves scream. At 3 a.m., the banging started. It wasn't a knock. It was violent, relentless pounding that rattled the door on its hinges. A deep voice roared Daniel's name, then Claire's, over and over. "Open the door! Now!" Claire clutched his arm, sobbing silently. Daniel grabbed the nearest object, a lamp, and stood frozen, muscles locked, waiting for the chain to snap. Then, as suddenly as it began, the pounding stopped. Silence draped the room like a shroud. They didn't sleep after that. At dawn, without showering or eating, they packed their bags and bolted. The front desk staff smiled politely as they checked out, as if nothing had happened. Daniel wanted to scream, to demand answers, but fear clamped his throat shut. They left without looking back. For a while, they tried to forget, pretend it was just a bizarre, isolated incident. But a few days later, Daniel couldn't shake the unease. He started searching online, digging into hotel reviews, hidden camera forums, anything that might explain what happened. That's when he found it. A private forum, encrypted, hidden behind layers of anonymity. Threads labeled with hotel names, room numbers. His blood turned to ice as he scrolled through grainy thumbnails. Couples in beds, showers, intimate moments stripped of privacy and sold to the highest bidder. The usernames laughed about fresh content, bragged about their setups, shared tips on hiding lenses. Daniel's breath caught when he saw it. Suite 1703. Their room. The thumbnail was small, but unmistakable. Claire's hair spread across the pillow, his own hand reaching for the lamp. The timestamp was from that night. He clicked. The video loaded slowly, each frame a punch to the gut, multiple angles, not just the alarm clock. There were cameras in the smoke detector, the TV, even the mirror. Every second of their night, captured, cataloged, consumed by strangers. His vision blurred as bile rose in his throat. He slammed the laptop shut, but the images burned in his mind. He never told Claire. How could he? How do you tell someone their most private moments are now currency for predators? He deleted his account, burned the laptop in the backyard like it might erase what happened. But deep down, he knew it wouldn't matter. Because the last post he saw before logging out wasn't about Suite 1703. It was a reply to his own IP address, traced somehow through the layers he thought would protect him. Just 5 words. Nice place you've got. And if you're listening to this wherever you are, take one last look at that smoke detector above your bed. Go ahead. Shine a light on it. Because if you see that tiny glint staring back at you, it might already be too late.
Have you ever stayed somewhere so late that the silence starts to feel wrong? Where the hum of fluorescent lights begins to sound like whispers and every shadow feels deliberate. That's what it was like for Mia on that Thursday night. The night everything changed. Mia was an intern at a mid-sized marketing firm downtown. She was eager to prove herself, so when her boss asked for a last-minute pitch deck revision, she volunteered to stay late. Everyone else had cleared out hours ago, their laughter and chatter fading with the sunset. By 9:30, the office was a hollow grid of empty cubicles, glowing monitors asleep, chairs spun at odd angles like they had been abandoned mid-thought. The conference room felt safer than her desk, brighter, cleaner, tucked behind a glass door with a view of the city lights. She spread out her notes, opened her laptop, and drowned herself in work. The steady clack of her keyboard was comforting in the quiet, but then she noticed something odd. It was the plant. A tall, decorative ficus in a ceramic pot tucked in the corner near the whiteboard. She had seen it before, nothing unusual about a fake plant in a sterile office, but now, under the harsh fluorescent light, something caught her eye. A hole, small, almost invisible, punched clean through the pot's surface and facing directly toward the conference table. Her pulse quickened. At first she thought it was just a chip in the ceramic, some manufacturing defect, but when she leaned closer, she saw something inside. A tiny black lens glinting back at her. A camera. Her throat tightened. Who puts a camera inside a fake plant? She checked the rest of the room, her gaze darting to the ceiling tiles, the corners, the glass walls. Nothing else looked suspicious. Just that one hidden eye, silently recording. She hesitated. Should she leave it alone? Pretend she didn't see it? But the thought of being watched without consent made her skin crawl. So, with trembling fingers, she tilted the plant slightly. The lens shifted, confirming it wasn't her imagination. She took out her phone and snapped a quick picture, her hands shaking so badly she nearly dropped it. She didn't sleep much that night. When she finally gathered the courage to report it, she went straight to her boss, Mr. Hale, the next morning. He was calm. Too calm. "Good eye," he said with a tight smile. "Don't worry. I'll take care of it. These things happen sometimes." "These things?" Mia repeated, confused. "Probably some old security measure nobody removed," he said, already turning back to his computer. "I'll handle it. You focus on your work." That was it. No questions, no concern, no HR formality, just brushed off like dust. Mia left his office feeling both relieved and unsettled. She thought about mentioning it to someone else, maybe HR, but something about his tone kept her silent. The next day, everything spiraled. Just after lunch, Mia got an email from HR summoning her to a private meeting. Her stomach knotted as she walked into the sterile room where 2 HR reps sat stone-faced behind a table. "Mia, do you understand why you're here?" She shook her head. "You've been accused of tampering with company property and violating internal privacy protocols." Her ears rang. "What? No, I didn't." They showed her a photo on a printed report. The plant. The same ficus from the conference room. Except now, the hole was gone. The pot was pristine, unmarked. "You damaged this," the rep said flatly. "No, there was a camera, I swear. There was a hole, and—" The other rep cut her off. "We've reviewed the security footage from that night. There's no record of you touching the plant." Mia felt like the air had been sucked out of the room. No record? That wasn't possible. She had tilted it. She remembered the scrape of ceramic against the floor, the weight in her hands. "You'll receive a formal notice," they said. Pushing a paper across the table, her vision blurred as she stared at the words, policy violation, disciplinary review, possible termination. By the time she stumbled out of HR, her hands were clammy, her heart pounding so hard it hurt. She wanted to scream, but who would listen? Her boss clearly didn't care. HR thought she was lying. And when she rushed back to the conference room, the plant was still there. Perfect. Untouched. No hole. No lens. Her phone photo. That would prove it. She yanked it out, opened her gallery, scrolled to last night. Nothing. The image was gone. That's when the paranoia really set in. She left work early, nerves frayed, and spent the evening pacing her tiny apartment. She kept checking the corners of the room, the red dots on her electronics, the glow from her TV. Every sound felt amplified, the hum of her refrigerator, the click of her radiator. At midnight, she finally sat on her couch, exhausted. That's when the email came. No subject line, no name, just an address she didn't recognize. The message was short. "You shouldn't have looked inside." Her stomach dropped. Attached was a video file. Hands shaking, she tapped it open. It was her, sitting in the conference room, hunched over her laptop, eyes heavy with fatigue. The angle was low, almost level with the table. From the plant's perspective. She scrubbed through the footage, her breath shallow. It wasn't just from last night. There were timestamps. Dozens of them. Every late night she had worked over the past 3 weeks. Every yawn, every phone call, every time she kicked off her heels under the table, all of it recorded.
She dropped the phone like it burned. Her mind screamed to call the police, call someone, anyone, but then it buzzed again. Another email. This time no words, just another video. She didn't want to watch it. Every instinct told her not to, but her hand moved anyway. The file opened. The same conference room, same angle, but she wasn't there. The chair was empty. For a moment nothing happened. Then, movement. Someone walked into frame. Slow, deliberate steps. A woman. Dark hair, same height, same build. Her clothes were wrong, slightly old-fashioned, muted colors. But her face. It was her. Not just a resemblance. It was Mia, down to the smallest detail. Only not. The smile was wrong, too wide, too still. The other Mia sat down in her chair, folded her hands on the table, and stared directly into the lens, directly at Mia. Then the feed cut to black. Her phone vibrated one last time. Another message. 2 words this time. See you. That was last night. Mia didn't go back to work today. She hasn't told anyone, not because she doesn't want to, but because she can't. Her laptop froze this morning with an error she couldn't clear. Her phone screen flickers every time she tries to call for help. She swears she hears whispers through the vents, like voices crawling down the pipes saying her name over and over, and just an hour ago, she checked her front door camera. There was a notification, a motion alert from 3 a.m. She played the clip and nearly dropped her phone. Someone was standing outside her door, staring straight at the camera. A woman. Her same face, same clothes she wore yesterday. The clip ends when the figure tilts her head and smiles. Mia locked every bolt, every chain. But what difference does it make when the thing that wants in already knows everything about you? If you think this is just a story, check the cameras in your office. Look at the plant in the corner. Make sure it's just a plant. And tonight, when your phone buzzes with an email you don't recognize, don't open it. Because if you do, you might see yourself staring back.
The snow crunched beneath the tires as the car crawled up the winding mountain road. The trees, heavy with white, bent low as if listening. Inside the car, laughter filled the silence of the winter wilderness. 3 friends escaping city chaos for peace, or so they thought. Emily sat in the passenger seat, staring at the road ahead, her breath fogging the window. Jake was driving, tapping the steering wheel to an imaginary beat, and Sarah leaned forward from the back seat, excitement shining in her eyes. "This place better have heat," Sarah said, blowing into her gloved hands. "I'm not freezing to death in some Instagram cabin." "It's got a fireplace," Jake replied with a grin. "Rustic charm, remember. You wanted authentic." Emily forced a smile. She had agreed to this trip reluctantly, hoping isolation would clear her head. The breakup, the job stress, maybe this cabin would feel like a reset. But as the car climbed higher into the mountains, she couldn't shake the sensation of being watched. When they finally pulled into the clearing, the cabin appeared from behind the trees like something out of a postcard. Wooden walls dusted with snow, smoke curling from the chimney, a porch light glowing warmly. Picturesque, safe, or so it seemed. Inside the cabin was cozy, a stone fireplace, plush chairs, and walls lined with polished wooden planks. The air smelled faintly of pine and something else, varnish, maybe, sharp and chemical. Emily ran her fingers over the wall, tracing the grain, until something caught her eye. At first, she thought it was a knot in the wood, but as she leaned closer, it gleamed faintly. A tiny circle, no bigger than a pinhead, glinting under the light. Like glass, like a lens. "Hey guys," she called softly. "Come look at this."
Sarah laughed when she saw it. What, the wall? That's word, Em. You're acting like you found treasure. No, seriously, Emily pointed. Does that look like a camera to you? Jake squinted, then chuckled. Paranoid much? It's probably just resin. These old cabins have imperfections. Emily wanted to believe him, but the thought gnawed at her. Still, she dropped it, convincing herself she was imagining things. They unpacked, opened a bottle of wine, and settled by the fire as the snow piled higher outside. Hours passed in easy conversation until Sarah climbed onto a chair to adjust a crooked smoke detector above the kitchen doorway. Her fingers froze mid-air. Jake?" Her voice trembled slightly. "Why does this smoke detector have a blinking red light inside?" Jake stood and took it down. Turning it over, the three of them stared in silence. It wasn't a smoke detector at all. A hidden camera stared back at them. "What the hell?" Jake muttered, ripping the wires from the ceiling. "Who the hell puts a camera in here?" Adrenaline surged through Emily as dread settled in her stomach. They tore through the cabin like maniacs, searching every corner. Behind a vent, inside a lamp, under the edge of the couch. One by one they found them. 7 cameras in total, all cleverly disguised. "What kind of sick freak does this?" Sarah whispered, clutching one of the devices like it might bite her. Emily's hands shook as she reached for her phone, but there was no signal, not even a single bar. "The landline," Jake said, grabbing the receiver from its cradle. He had just started dialing when it rang in his hand. They all froze. The shrill sound sliced through the silence like a blade. Jake slowly brought it to his ear. "Hello?" For a moment, nothing. Then a voice, low and gravelly, seeped through the line. "You were never supposed to find those." Jake's face drained of color. "Who is this?" The voice chuckled, slow and cold. "You should have left them where they were." Click. The line went dead. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then the lights flickered and died. Darkness swallowed the cabin, leaving only the fire's glow licking shadows across the walls. "Okay, Sarah," whispered, panic cracking her voice. "We're leaving, now." Jake grabbed the car keys, but Emily's gaze was fixed on the window. Her breath caught. "Look." Outside, under the pale wash of moonlight, fresh footprints trailed through the snow, not leading to the cabin, circling it, over and over, looping like a ritual. "Is someone out there?" Sarah's words were barely audible. Jake moved toward the door, but Emily grabbed his arm. "Don't! If they cut the power, they want us out there." A floorboard creaked behind them. They spun around. Nothing. Just the empty cabin, cloaked in shadow. The fire hissed softly, throwing sparks as if mocking their fear. Emily's pulse pounded in her ears. "We stick together," Jake said, his voice low but trembling. "Grab something, anything you can use as a weapon." Emily snatched a poker from the fireplace. Sarah clutched a heavy lamp. They backed into a corner, the cameras they'd ripped from the walls scattered like dead insects at their feet. Minutes stretched like hours, until faintly, from somewhere in the cabin, came the sound of a whisper. Soft, almost tender. "Emily." Her name, drawn out like a lover's sigh. She spun, scanning the darkness. "Who said that?" Jake shook his head violently. "It wasn't me." "Emily." The voice again, closer now. Her throat tightened. It sounded like her mother, but her mother was hundreds of miles away. "This isn't real," she whispered, clutching the poker so hard her knuckles ached. Suddenly the whisper fractured into laughter, low, guttural, vibrating through the walls, like the cabin itself was laughing at them. "Stop it, Sarah!" Screamed, hurling the lamp. It shattered, plunging them into deeper darkness. The front door creaked open. Cold air rushed in, snuffing out the fire with a hiss. "Jake?" Emily whispered, but when she turned, he was gone. "Jake!" Her voice broke as she stumbled forward, groping in the dark. No answer. Just the whisper, now multiplying, overlapping in a chorus of voices. Some called her name, others murmured words she couldn't understand, syllables slick and wet like something crawling through her skull. Then came a thud from above. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Sarah grabbed Emily's arm. "We have to go, now." They ran for the door, boots crunching on broken glass, lungs seizing in the icy air. The footprints in the snow weren't circling anymore. They were leading away, into the trees, vanishing into blackness. "Where's Jake?" Emily cried, twisting back toward the cabin. The windows glowed faintly, though no fire burned inside. Shapes moved in the glass. Not one shape, many. "Emily," Sarah sobbed, dragging her forward. "Please, we have to run." But Emily couldn't move, because in that window staring back at her with hollow eyes was her own face. It smiled. The landline rang again from inside, shrill and relentless. Sarah bolted into the darkness, her screams shredding the silence. Emily stood frozen as the ringing stopped, replaced by the voice, now right behind her ear. "You were never supposed to leave." Everything went black. When she woke, daylight spilled through the windows. The cabin was warm. The fire crackled. Jake and Sarah sat by the hearth and smiled. "Rough night?" Jake asked, handing her a mug of coffee. Emily blinked. The cameras were gone. The walls were smooth. Her boots were dry. Maybe it was a nightmare. "Don't worry," Sarah said softly. "You're safe now." Emily sipped the coffee, letting the warmth calm her shaking hands. Then she noticed it, a tiny glint in the wooden wall just above the fireplace. Like glass, like a lens. Her breath hitched. "Everything okay?" Jake's voice was warm, but his eyes didn't blink. Outside, snow began to fall again, erasing the old footprints. "And if you hear your name tonight, don't answer."
Have you ever agreed to something so simple, so ordinary, only to discover it was the biggest mistake of your life? That's exactly how it started for Emily, a 21-year-old college student just trying to make some extra cash. Babysitting wasn't new to her. In fact, she'd done it countless times before. But that night, the quiet suburban house she stepped into would become a nightmare she could never have imagined. The Mitchells' home looked like something out of a magazine. High ceilings, polished floors, pristine furniture, and the faint scent of expensive candles lingering in the air. Emily had been recommended through a friend, and Mrs. Mitchell had sounded sweet on the phone. "We'll be gone for a few hours. Baby's already had dinner and just needs to sleep. Simple night," she had said. Easy money, Emily thought. All she had to do was keep the baby safe until midnight, then head home. Nothing strange about that. When she arrived, Mr. and Mrs. Mitchell greeted her warmly. Both were well-dressed, as if heading to an upscale event. They gave her a quick tour of the house, the nursery upstairs, the kitchen, and the living room where she could relax. The baby, Oliver, was already yawning in his crib, a tiny bundle of innocence with a soft blanket clutched in his fists. Emily felt reassured. Everything seemed perfect. After the Mitchells left, Emily settled into the nursery, humming softly as she rocked Oliver until he drifted off to sleep. The only sounds were the rhythmic tick of a wall clock and the faint hum of the central air system. She laid him gently in the crib, adjusted the baby monitor on the nightstand, and sat down to scroll through her phone. That's when she noticed it. Something faint, almost unnoticeable at first, a tiny red blink coming from the vent across the room. Emily squinted. The vent was just above eye level, a standard metal grate painted white. But there, tucked behind the slats, was a light, a blinking light. Her first thought was rational. It had to be some kind of sensor, maybe part of the HVAC system. But the longer she stared,
the less sense it made. Why would a vent need a blinking red light? She stood up, tiptoeing closer, careful not to wake Oliver. Peering through the slots, her stomach tightened. It wasn't a sensor. It was a lens. A camera lens. Her mind scrambled for an explanation. Maybe it was a baby monitor. But no, the monitor was already on the nightstand, and it didn't even match the vent camera. Why would there be two? And more importantly, who was watching? Her heart rate quickened. She whispered to herself, trying to stay calm. Maybe they installed it for extra security. Rich people did strange things sometimes. But even as she told herself that, unease curled deep in her gut. Something wasn't right. She stepped out of the nursery, clutching her phone like a lifeline. Her bare feet made no sound on the polished floor as she moved down the hallway. The house seemed larger now, darker, the soft hum of appliances almost deafening. In the living room, the dim glow of a decorative lamp illuminated the Mitchells' immaculate decor. Glass tables, leather chairs, and an ornate vase perched on a pedestal in the corner. Emily froze. There it was again. Another, faint red blink inside the vase. She approached slowly, her breath shallow, pulse pounding in her ears. The vase was hollow, its glossy surface reflecting the faint light, and nestled inside, just barely visible through the neck, was another camera. Emily's throat dried. 2 cameras, maybe more, watching everything. Her fingers trembled as she unlocked her phone. She typed quickly, her thumbs clumsy with panic. Why are there cameras in the house? She hit send to Mrs. Mitchell, praying for an innocent answer, something that would make this all go away. The reply came almost instantly, as if they'd been waiting. Do not touch anything. We're watching you. Emily's breath caught, her vision blurred as the words burned into her mind. We're watching you. They weren't talking about the baby. They were talking about her. The house felt different now, like the walls were closing in, like unseen eyes were crawling over her skin. She stepped away from the vase, her knees weak, her thoughts spiraling. What did they mean? Why would they say that? Her instinct screamed to leave. Forget the money, just get out. But Oliver, she couldn't just abandon him. Heart racing, she bolted upstairs to the nursery. The baby was still sleeping, oblivious to the growing terror that gripped the house. She snatched her phone again and dialed her boyfriend, Ryan. He answered on the second ring, his voice calm and grounding. Hey, Em, everything okay? No, she whispered, her voice shaking. There are cameras in the house, hidden ones, and the parents, they just texted me. They said they're watching me. A pause. What? Are you sure? Yes, Ryan, I don't know what to do. I'm freaking out. Okay, listen, get the baby and get out. I'll stay on the phone with you. Emily nodded, even though he couldn't see her. She slipped her arm under Oliver, cradling him against her chest. His tiny body was warm, his soft breaths a fragile reminder of innocence amid the chaos. She moved towards the door, her phone pressed between her ear and shoulder. And then the line went dead. Static. Silence. She pulled the phone away, staring at the screen in disbelief. Call failed. She tried again, fingers trembling so hard she could barely hit the buttons. Nothing. No signal? But that didn't make sense. She had full bars earlier. A sound broke the silence, a slow groaning creak that made her blood run cold. It came from downstairs, the front door. Emily froze, every muscle locking in place. The Mitchells had said they'd be out for hours, so who just came in? Her mind screamed to her to hide, to barricade the door, but her body wouldn't move. She stood there, clutching Oliver, listening as the door clicked shut. Then, footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, moving across the polished floor. Her breath hitched. She crept back into the nursery, closing the door as quietly as possible, heart hammering so loud she was sure it would give her away. She pressed her ear against the wood, straining to hear. The footsteps grew louder, echoing up the stairs. Whoever it was, they were coming straight for her. Emily scanned the room in desperation. The closet? Too obvious. Under the crib? Impossible with the baby. Her eyes darted to the window. 2nd floor. A drop that could break bones, but maybe not kill her. Her pulse roared in her ears as the footsteps stopped right outside the door. A shadow passed beneath the crack. And then, the doorknob twist. slowly, deliberately. Emily's body locked in place, every nerve screaming. She clutched Oliver tighter, his soft whimper slicing through the silence like a blade. The knob twisted further, metal scraping metal. Any second now it would open. But it didn't. The sound stopped. The shadow lingered for a moment, then vanished. Footsteps retreated down the hall, fading into silence. Emily waited, muscles trembling, lungs burning from holding her breath. Seconds dragged into minutes. Finally, she dared to move. She tiptoed to the door, ear pressed against it. Nothing. Whoever it was, they were gone, or hiding. Her phone buzzed in her hand, making her yelp. A text from Mrs. Mitchell. "Put the baby back, leave the house, do not look behind you." Emily's blood iced over. Her throat tightened as the meaning sunk in. Slowly, mechanically, she lowered Oliver back into the crib, her hands trembling so violently she almost dropped him. She backed towards the door, her phone clutched like a lifeline. And then, curiosity, that fatal spark overpowered fear. Do not look behind you. Why? What was there? She turned. The scream never left her throat. Standing in the corner, barely illuminated by the glow of the nightlight, was herself, or something wearing her face. Same clothes, same hair, same wide, terror-filled eyes staring back at her. But its smile, God, that smile, was wrong. Stretched too wide, teeth glinting in the dim light. It raised a finger to its lips and whispered in her own voice, "Shh, they're still watching." The room tilted. Darkness closed in, and in the split second before everything went black, Emily's last thought was the most horrifying of all. It wasn't wearing her face. It was taking it. And if you're listening to this now, ask yourself one question. Are you sure the eyes watching you belong to someone you know? Or are they waiting, smiling, in the corner, wearing you?
The rain had been pounding the highway for hours, turning the asphalt into a slick ribbon of darkness. Logan's eyes burned from the long haul, the white lines blurring together under the relentless wipers. He'd been driving for 16 straight hours, carrying a load of refrigeration units out of St. Louis. By the time he saw the glowing red vacancy sign on the horizon, it felt like salvation. He eased his rig off the exit and rolled up to a squat roadside motel, the kind that looked like it hadn't changed since the 70s. A single row of rooms, flickering fluorescent lights, and a front office that smelled faintly of mildew when he stepped inside. The clerk barely looked up from his phone. "One night?" he asked, his voice flat, rehearsed. "Yeah," Logan muttered, fishing for his wallet. The man slid a key across the counter, old-fashioned metal with a big plastic fob. No small talk, no questions, just a blank stare that followed Logan as he turned toward room 6. The room was exactly what he expected. Stale air, faded floral curtains, a bedspread with cigarette burns that told stories no one wanted to hear. He tossed his duffel bag on the bed, kicked off his boots, and headed straight for the bathroom. All he wanted was a hot shower to wash off the road grime. The fluorescent light buzzed overhead as he peeled off his shirt and stepped inside. The water sputtered, then surged, lukewarm but good enough. He leaned into the spray, letting it drum against his sore shoulders. For a few minutes, everything was normal, until he reached up to adjust the shower head. His fingers brushed against the metal, and something felt off. It wasn't smooth like it should be. There was a rough edge, almost like a seam that didn't belong. Frowning, he twisted the fixture, and with a sharp click, the shower head loosened in his hands. What he saw froze him in place. Inside the hollow tube, nestled where the water should flow, was a tiny black eye staring back at him. A lens, no bigger than a dime, but unmistakable. A camera. His stomach dropped as a rush of icy water streamed down his back.
For a moment he just stood there, heart thudding in his ears, the reality sinking in like a lead weight. Someone had been watching. He yanked the device free and stumbled out of the shower, water pooling on the cracked linoleum. The thing was still warm from the water, droplets clinging to the metal like sweat. His hands shook as he pried at the seams. A red light blinked faintly inside, and when he pressed the side, the camera hummed, a tiny, almost smug vibration that told him it was live, recording, maybe streaming. Son of a... Logan muttered under his breath, his voice cracking with anger. He jammed on his jeans, grabbed the dripping camera, and stormed out the door barefoot, his wet footprints marking a trail of fury across the walkway. The clerk was still behind the desk, eyes glued to his phone, when Logan slammed the device down hard enough to make the man flinch. "What the hell is this?" Logan barked, voice echoing in the empty lobby. The clerk blinked, glanced at the camera, then back at Logan, with an expression so blank it was almost inhuman. "What is what?" "Don't play dumb with me. You think this is a joke? You spying on guests? You're recording people in the damn shower?" The man's lips trembled, but his eyes, cold, glassy, never quite matched the fear in his tone. "Sir, please, we don't do that here." Something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. Not what he said, how he said it. Mechanical, like a script he'd been forced to read. I stared at him for a long, tense second, chest heaving, then snatched the camera back off the counter. "Forget it," he snarled. "I'm outta here." He spun on his heel and stomped back towards his room, fury simmering just beneath the surface. But when he pushed open the door, the fury turned to ice. Everything was wrong. His duffel bag zipped shut and sitting neatly by the door, his boots lined up side by side, laces tucked in like a hotel maid had fussed over them. And the bathroom? Bone dry. The floor gleamed as if it had never been wet. The shower head was gone, the pipe capped with a shiny new fixture that looked nothing like the one he'd twisted off minutes ago. Logan stood frozen in the doorway, the damp denim clinging to his legs, his bare feet leaving puddles on the carpet. His brain scrambled for an explanation, any explanation, but there was none that made sense. He'd been gone for 2 minutes, 3 at most. No one could have done this so fast. No one should have even known. Unless they'd been watching the entire time. A prickle crawled up the back of his neck. Slowly, he spanned the room, every shadow suddenly alive, every angle a potential eye. He grabbed his bag and bolted, heart jackhammering as he sprinted across the lot. The clerk didn't look up as he passed, didn't move, just sat there, staring at nothing, his face lit by the glow of a dead phone screen. Rain pelted Logan as he jumped into his truck and fired up the engine. The wipers screeched across the glass, barely keeping pace with the torrent. He pulled onto the highway like the devil was on his tail, speedometer climbing past 70, then 80. He didn't care. He just needed distance, miles of it between him and that place. That's when his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, expecting a weather alert, maybe a missed call. Instead, it was a notification from an app he didn't remember installing. The title made his stomach turn to stone. New video uploaded. Lonely Guests, Volume 19. Beneath it, a thumbnail, a blurry still of a bathroom, steam curling in the air, a man's silhouette behind a shower curtain. My silhouette. For a heartbeat, he couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The truck swerved, tires screaming as he fought the wheel back under control. His fingers trembled as he tapped the screen, but the link was dead, the app vanishing like smoke the second he touched it. He opened his gallery, his files, nothing, no trace, as if it had never existed. The rain fell harder, drumming against the cab like 1,000 tiny fists. His breath came in short, ragged bursts.
He checked the mirrors compulsively, but the road behind him was empty. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling, no, the certainty that eyes were on him. Not from behind, from everywhere, from inside the glassy black mirrors of his own phone. Another buzz, a new notification. Different app this time, uploading 67%. His hand slipped on the wheel. The screen flashed bright for a split second, just long enough for him to see another image. His truck cab, right now, and behind his seat, half hidden in shadow, a shape that shouldn't be there. A head, a smile, eyes open ends. The phone went black. The wipers groaned, then stopped. The headlights flickered out, plunging the cab into darkness except for the faint glow of the dashboard. Logan didn't turn around. He couldn't. His breath fogged the windshield as the truck slowed to a crawl, coasting on dead momentum. In the silence, he heard it, soft at first, like water dripping from a faucet, then louder, clearer, a whisper curling up from the shadows behind him. Smile for the camera. And if you're sitting there, listening to this, and wondering if it could happen to you, check your bathroom tonight. Twist the shower head. Just make sure it's still a shower head. Because if it's not, if you see that tiny black eye staring back at you, it's already too late.
Have you ever wondered how much of your privacy is truly yours, even behind locked doors? For Jessica, a college sophomore desperate for affordable housing, the answer revealed itself in ways she could never forget. She had moved off campus midway through the semester, unable to afford dorm fees anymore. That's how she found herself renting a small, dimly lit one-bedroom apartment just a few blocks from campus. The landlord, a middle-aged man who seemed hurried and impatient during their first meeting, offered it to her at a price so low she didn't question it. She signed the lease, grateful to finally have a place that fit her limited budget. The first few nights were unremarkable. Jessica spent her evenings studying, listening to music, or video calling her friends. The apartment was plain and slightly outdated, with peeling wallpaper and creaky floorboards, but she brushed that off as part of its character. What struck her as odd was how cold it always felt at night, even with the heating on. She would lie in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to faint noises she couldn't quite place, static-like hissing, almost as though a television were on in another room. At first, she dismissed it as poor insulation, letting in the hum of neighbors' electronics. But the sounds didn't stop. It was always the same. When she turned off her lamp, the faint crackle of static drifted from behind the bedroom wall. She pressed her ear to it once, straining to hear, and thought she could make out muffled voices, distorted as though underwater. Her stomach tightened with unease, but she forced herself to laugh it off. Old buildings had quirks, and she wasn't going to let paranoia get the better of her. A few weeks later, her friend Mariah came over to hang out. They sat cross-legged on Jessica's bed, eating pizza and watching a movie on her laptop, when Mariah suddenly stopped mid-bite and frowned. "Jess, what's that?" she asked, pointing toward the wall behind them. Jessica turned and saw Mariah staring at the cheap framed print hanging slightly askew near the headboard. She shrugged. "It came with the place. Why?" "Because it's crooked, and hold on." Mariah climbed off the bed and lifted the frame. Behind it, a small, perfectly round hole was drilled into the plaster. Jessica's breath caught in her throat. The hole was no bigger than the head of a pencil, positioned at exactly the right angle to point at her bed. The girls exchanged a nervous glance. Jessica's hands trembled as she leaned closer. Something glimmered faintly inside the hole. With her phone flashlight, she illuminated it and froze. A tiny lens reflected back at her. "It's a camera," Mariah whispered. Jessica's chest tightened. Her mind reeled, trying to comprehend what she was seeing. She tugged on the frame of the hole, her fingernails scraping plaster, and exposed a thin black wire disappearing into the wall. Her heart hammered. "No way," she muttered. "This can't be real." But it was. They followed the wire carefully, running their hands along the wall until it vanished behind a locked closet door in the corner of the room. The closet had always been sealed shut, with a padlock that Jessica assumed contained utilities or cleaning supplies. Now her skin crawled with the knowledge that it was hiding something much darker. Mariah's voice shook as she asked, "Do you have anything to break this?" Jessica hesitated, panic warring with dread, but finally retrieved a hammer from her small kitchen. With a hard swing, she smashed the lock until it snapped open. Together, they pulled the door wide open and gasped. Inside, the closet wasn't filled with brooms or buckets. Instead, it was a makeshift control room. Multiple monitors glowed faintly in the dark. A computer tower hummed, surrounded by tangled cords and equipment. The central screen showed a live feed of Jessica's bedroom. Her bed, her desk, every inch of the space in which she had been living for weeks. The worst part wasn't just that the feed existed. It was that thousands of usernames scrolled rapidly along the side of the screen, accompanied by lines of text. Viewers were commenting in real time, typing things like, "She's back again," and "Turn off the light, I want to see her sleep." Some comments mentioned details Jessica hadn't even told her closest friends. Her stomach lurched as the realization set in. She had been watched. Every night, every moment of privacy, broadcast without her knowledge to strangers across the internet. Mariah grabbed her arm. "We need to call the police right now." Jessica nodded, fumbling for her phone, when a sharp crackle erupted from the apartment intercom mounted on the wall near the door. Static hissed, then cleared, and a man's voice echoed through the apartment. "I told you not to touch that." Jessica's blood ran cold. Her landlord's voice. Mariah screamed, yanking Jessica toward the front door, but the handle wouldn't budge. It rattled uselessly in her grip, as though sealed shut from the outside. The intercom crackled again. "You were doing so well. You could have just lived here. You could have been perfect." Jessica dropped her phone in panic, the device clattering to the floor. She scrambled to pick it up, only to see the screen flicker with interference. The call screen wouldn't load. Every app froze. It was as if the phone itself was hijacked. On the monitors, the live feed began to distort. The image of Jessica's bedroom wavered, duplicating and splitting. For a moment, Jessica saw not just herself on the screen, but versions of herself. One sleeping, one sitting at the desk, one staring directly at the camera with lifeless eyes. Each duplicate twitched unnaturally, glitching like corrupted files. Mariah pulled Jessica back, whispering frantically, "This isn't just streaming. This is something else. Jess, this isn't right." From the intercom, a low laugh seeped through. "They like you. They've been waiting for you." The comments on the live stream blurred together into one endless line of text. "Stay, stay, stay." Over and over, the words repeated, flooding the screen in unnatural unison. Jessica's vision swum. The static she had heard at night now roared inside her ears. She stumbled back against the bed, clutching her head. The air grew heavy, suffocating, as though the apartment itself was closing in. She tried to scream, but her throat locked tight. Mariah grabbed her by the shoulders, shouting, "We need to break a window." She hurled the hammer at the glass, but when it struck, the window rippled like water instead of shattering. The reflection staring back wasn't theirs. It was the warped, lifeless-eyed versions from the monitor, smiling faintly. Jessica collapsed to her knees, gasping. The intercom voice whispered, soft now, intimate. You don't understand. This is forever." The monitors flickered once more, and Jessica realized with dawning horror that the camera feed had changed. It no longer showed just her bedroom. It showed the entire apartment, every angle at once. The perspective wasn't from a lens anymore. It was as if the walls themselves were watching. She tried to crawl toward the closet, desperate to pull cords and shut it down, but the static filled her skull. The comments scrolled faster, unreadable now, a flood of symbols and distorted words. Mariah's screen cut through the noise, then choked into silence. Jessica looked up and saw Mariah standing beside her, motionless, her eyes hollow and flickering like a digital screen. The intercom hissed with finality. "Now you're part of the show." The last thing Jessica remembered was the sensation of being pulled, not by hands, but by sight itself. The feed swallowed her whole. Weeks later, the apartment was quietly listed again, advertised online as a budget-friendly student rental. The landlord's name never appeared in the records, and yet, in certain corners of the internet, a stream continues under the title Room 6 Live. Thousands still watch. Sometimes, late at night, viewers claim the girl on the bed shifts slightly, eyes flicking toward the camera, lips forming a silent warning. If you ever find yourself in a cheap apartment and the walls hum with static after dark, remember this: the show never ends. And if you hear a voice from the intercom telling you not to touch something, don't.
Have you ever thought about how vulnerable you really are in the places you feel most private? Behind closed doors, under running water, convinced that the world cannot see you? That's what she believed when she joined the new gym, a place that promised not only health and luxury, but privacy and safety. The gym had opened only a month earlier, and it quickly became the city's status symbol. Polished marble floors, chrome fixtures, rows of spotless machines, and showers that looked more like spa suites than locker room stalls. It was the kind of gym you paid for not just to work out, but to be seen going to. She had joined after hearing about the private showers. No curtains, no flimsy dividers, but fully tiled enclosures with locked doors and rainfall heads. After years of cramped locker rooms and drafty stalls, this felt like a dream. Each shower had its own little changing bench, ambient lighting, and even Bluetooth speakers you could connect your phone to. It was marketed as your personal sanctuary after your workout, and for weeks it felt exactly like that. She would finish her evening sessions, step into the steaming water, and let the day wash off of her without a single worry in the world. It was on a Wednesday evening, after a particularly long session on the treadmill, that she first noticed it. She was rinsing shampoo from her hair when she saw it, a strange bead of condensation clinging stubbornly to a single tile. At first she thought nothing of it, but the drop didn't fall. It almost seemed to grow, to pulse with her movements. Wiping at it with her hand, she expected slick tile underneath. Instead, her fingers brushed against a pinprick hole, so tiny she might have missed it entirely had the steam not gathered there. And inside, just behind that hole, a reflection caught her eye. A lens. Her chest tightened. She stepped back instantly, water still running down her body, heart pounding louder than the shower. A camera. Someone had placed a camera inside the shower. She stood frozen, body naked and exposed, while every instinct screamed to cover herself. She snatched her towel, wrapped it tightly around her, and pressed her face close to the tile. There was no mistaking it. A round, glassy surface glinting faintly from behind the hole. Someone had been watching. Fury replaced fear. She stormed out of the shower, dripping wet, ignoring the stares of other members in the locker room. She marched straight to the front desk, demanding to speak with the manager. The staff scrambled, alarmed by her tone, and within minutes the general manager appeared, a polished man in a tailored suit who seemed more suited for a boardroom than a gym. She explained what she had seen, voice trembling with anger. The manager's expression shifted from confusion to horror. He apologized profusely, assured her that this was unacceptable, and promised an immediate investigation. That night, she left the gym shaken but slightly relieved. Surely it was a mistake. Surely the gym, with all its wealth and prestige, would handle it. She even received a follow-up email from the manager within hours, apologizing again and confirming that security staff had been dispatched to inspect the showers. They promised to replace tiles, review surveillance footage, and contact her once they had answers. She almost believed them. The next day she returned, not out of trust but suspicion. After her workout she approached the same shower, half expecting to see the hole again. But when she looked, the tile was perfect. Smooth, unbroken ceramic, no sign of disturbance. The grout lines were neat, the surface spotless. No camera, no hole, as if it had never been there. When she asked the front desk, the staff smiled politely and told her that the showers were fine and that management had handled everything. For a moment she wondered if she had imagined it, if the steam at her exhaustion had tricked her eyes. But that night as she scrolled through her phone before bed, her notifications began flooding in. Dozens of new messages from anonymous accounts. At first they seemed harmless, just odd. You looked amazing today. Red towel suits you. You have such perfect skin. Her stomach dropped as she read on. These weren't generic compliments. They were descriptions, real-time details of what she had looked like in the shower. And the accounts multiplied by the hour, each new message making her skin crawl. She deleted them, blocked what she could, but more kept coming. And worse, some messages weren't just about her appearance. They described things she hadn't noticed herself. The way you touched your hair under the water. The way your lips trembled when you looked at the wall. Someone had seen her fear, her panic, and immortalized it in words. She reported the accounts, locked her profile, and even considered going to the police. But with no proof, no physical evidence of the camera, what would she say? That she had imagined a hole that now wasn't there? Weeks passed. She tried to put it behind her, though every time she showered, even at home, she caught herself scanning the tiles, the vents, the corners of the ceiling. Privacy no longer existed. She felt hunted in her own skin. The breaking point came one evening when a coworker sent her a message, asking if it was really her in a video link. Confused, she clicked before she could stop herself. What she saw made her collapse inside. Grainy footage of herself, unmistakably her, stepping into the gym shower, undressing, rinsing, completely unaware. The video was uploaded to a site she'd never heard of, one infamous for live voyeurism streams. She scrolled through the site with shaking hands, only to find more videos, each tagged with the name of her city, the gym's location hidden in plain sight among dozens of others. The comments below were the worst. Strangers dissecting her body, her routines, even speculating about when she might return. Some said they'd seen her before in other clips. Others begged for her schedule, for someone to stream her live again. Her throat closed as she read them. It wasn't just one camera. It wasn't just one hole. This was a network, a system built into the very walls of the gym. She reported the site, contacted authorities, and even returned to the gym demanding answers. But management denied everything. They insisted there had never been a camera, that no tiles had been replaced, that she must be mistaken. One staff member even laughed nervously and suggested she had imagined it out of paranoia. The same gym she had trusted, The same staff who had promised to investigate now looked at her as if she were unstable. And then came the cruelest twist. When she demanded the surveillance footage from the night she reported the hole, management claimed such record existed. Their cameras had glitched, they said. Nothing was stored. But she remembered seeing cameras everywhere in the lobby, in the halls, even outside the locker rooms. Conveniently, the footage of her complaint was missing. Everywhere she turned, doors slammed shut. Police told her that the site's servers were overseas, nearly impossible to trace. The gym threatened legal action if she defamed them publicly. And the messages on her phone didn't stop. If anything, they grew bolder. They referenced her home, her commute, her favorite cafe. Somehow, they knew where she lived. The videos weren't just from the gym anymore. They were closer, more personal. One night, unable to sleep, she scrolled the site again, desperate to know how bad it had become. That's when she found it. A new live stream, just uploaded minutes ago. The title was her street name. She clicked, and the screen filled with grainy footage of her own bathroom shower. She was staring at herself in real time, stepping nervously toward her own shower. Only she hadn't gone in yet. The stream showed her moving seconds before she actually did. Her phone slipped from her hands, clattering against the floor. The chat filled with anticipation, viewers commenting as if they already knew what she was about to do. Some even typed her name. The air on her apartment grew colder, heavier. And in the corner of her bathroom wall, above the shower tiles, she noticed it again. A perfect bead of condensation clinging stubbornly where it shouldn't be.
Have you ever trusted something to keep you safe, only to realize it was the very thing betraying you? That was the case for the Dwyer family, who thought they were making the right choice when they invested in a cutting-edge smart home security system. They weren't naive, just cautious. The neighborhood had seen a few break-ins, and while their town wasn't known for violent crime, whispers of burglary and car theft put them on edge. With 2 young children, a modern system that promised 24/7 surveillance, instant alerts, and remote access felt like the most responsible move. At first, it was reassuring. The cameras lined the exterior of the house like watchful guardians, while small but powerful indoor devices kept an eye on the hallways, the living room, and the entrances. The system was voice-responsive, easy to check through an app, and even the kids liked to wave at the cameras when they came downstairs for breakfast. For months, nothing strange happened. The app would buzz with harmless notifications, a cat passing by, wind rustling a bush, or the delivery driver dropping off a package. The Dwiners slept easier, knowing they had eyes everywhere. But comfort has a way of making people blind. It was Caroline, the mother, who first noticed something odd. She would occasionally hear faint noises coming from the indoor cameras late at night. At first, she dismissed them as technical glitches, interference from the Wi-Fi, or maybe the low hum of the device's internal system. But some nights when the house was still, and she was half awake feeding the baby or checking on the children, she swore she heard muffled static, sometimes almost like breathing. She told herself it was nothing. Technology always has quirks, and she didn't want to seem paranoid in front of her husband, David. But then one night, as she folded laundry in the living room with the TV off and the only sound being the tumble of clothes in the dryer, a whisper slipped from the camera speaker. Clear, deliberate. A man's voice said, "Nice pajamas." Caroline froze. Her heart felt like it stopped in her chest. The air turned sharp and cold. She looked down at herself. She was wearing an old cotton set with faded stripes. Nothing remarkable, yet the specificity of the comment sent a shock through her. She snatched her phone, opened the app, and checked the feed. Nothing unusual. The cameras showed the empty living room exactly as it was.
She tried to tell herself it must have been interference again, maybe a neighbor's baby monitor or some stray broadcast signal. But the voice, it was too real, too directed at her. The next day, she tried to bring it up to David casually. He chuckled nervously, brushed it off, and suggested maybe she was overtired. And she was. Between work, the kids, and the house, she hadn't had a full night's sleep in weeks. Maybe she had imagined it. But then a week later, it happened again. This time, she was certain. Late at night, creeping into the kitchen for a glass of water, she heard static again. Then, almost blending into the sound of the refrigerator, the voice came back. "You shouldn't be awake." Her glass slipped from her hand and shattered on the floor. She stared at the black lens of the camera above the pantry door, her pulse pounding so hard she felt dizzy. She didn't think. She unplugged every single indoor camera, pulling cords from outlets, yanking devices from walls until the house was silent again. Relief washed over her. Finally, the intrusions were gone. But then her phone buzzed. A push notification from the security app. Motion detected in the living room. She hadn't reconnected the cameras, yet the notification had come through anyway. Against every instinct screaming at her to throw the phone away, she tapped it. The live feed opened. The footage was dark but visible enough. The living room couch, the TV stand, the window curtains drawn tight. But there was something else. Someone was standing in the corner, just at the edge of the shot, not moving, just watching. Her breath caught in her throat. She blinked hard, and the figure was gone. The feed showed only an empty room. She wanted to believe her mind had conjured it, but the unease twisting her gut told her otherwise. She contacted the security provider first thing in the morning. The call was brief, dismissive, and deeply unsettling. They swore the system was secure. No breaches, no signs of hacking, no logins from unfamiliar devices. They told her that what she experienced wasn't possible, that the cameras couldn't transmit sound in the way she described. When she pushed harder, they suggested perhaps a neighbor's Wi-Fi interference was to blame. But Caroline knew better. She wasn't imagining things. The following day, David logged into their account to double-check, except the account no longer existed. Every username, every password reset attempt, every detail they entered returned the same message: user not found. And when they finally managed to speak to a representative again, they were told there was no record of them ever being customers. All of their data, their months of recorded footage, their profile wiped clean. The system that once promised safety now only filled the house with silence and dread. Caroline began taping over every camera lens, even the laptops and tablets. She refused to let her children near the devices, and at night she lay awake listening to the faintest creaks and groans of the house, terrified of hearing the voice again. Weeks passed. Slowly, the fear dulled into unease, like an old scar that never quite heals. They convinced themselves maybe it had been a bizarre glitch, some anomaly that would never repeat. The camera stayed unplugged, shoved into a drawer in the garage. Life tried to creep back toward normal, until the envelope arrived. It was a plain manila package with no return address, slipped through their mail slot one rainy afternoon. Inside was a single USB drive. No note, no markings, nothing. David hesitated to plug it in, but curiosity and dread gnawed at him until he couldn't resist. He loaded it onto his laptop, his hands trembling as Caroline stood behind him, clutching his shoulder. The drive contained hundreds of video files, each one dated and time-stamped from nights over the past several months. The Dwyers watched in horror as the first clip loaded. Their bedroom, dimly lit, the two of them sleeping soundly. The camera had been unplugged, yet here it was, recording. Another clip, their children's room, both kids breathing softly in their beds, utterly vulnerable. Clip after clip, night after night, capturing the most intimate moments of their lives. Caroline rocking the baby, David checking the locks before bed. Even private arguments whispered in the kitchen. The final file stopped them cold. It wasn't their house. It was a dim, unfamiliar room. The angle was the same, static, fixed in one corner, but the subjects were different. A family of 4, sleeping. The mother stirred slightly in her bed, her arm wrapped around her child. And then from the corner of the frame, a figure leaned into view. The same figure Caroline had seen in her living room feed. It stood there for a long moment, unmoving, face obscured in the shadows. Then slowly, it turned to look directly at the camera. Directly at them. David slammed the laptop shut, but the damage had already been done. They knew now that their home had never been safe. The cameras weren't broken. The app wasn't hacked. They had invited something in, something that wasn't human, something that was watching them and others. That night, Caroline lay in bed, wide awake, her heart hammering as the silence pressed against her ears. She kept glancing at the dark corner of their room, half expecting the shadow to step forward. And as she finally began to drift toward uneasy sleep, her phone buzzed on the nightstand. She picked it up with trembling hands. A notification lit the screen. Motion detected in the bedroom. And if you hear a whisper in your room tonight, telling you it likes what you're wearing, be very careful before you look toward the corner.